from self-sufficiency to contributing and producing for markets. Now, Jason has a thought that he'd like to share with the review session. Jason.
Was Van Buren's election of 36?
Van Buren was elected in 36.
Okay.
All right. Harrison was elected in 40. Yes. The market revolution was a transformation from economic self-sufficiency to production from markets and acquisition of goods and services, or I should say, production into markets and acquisition of goods and services from markets. I mean, it was the movement from people producing what they needed for themselves on self-sufficient farms to people producing products and services for markets and then exchanging those for currency and buying what they needed from markets. And although it doesn't sound very glamorous or interesting, we said it was a big deal. The market revolution was a major transformation that changed the way that people met their material needs during the antebellum period. Now, one of the biggest aspects of the market revolution was industrialization. And we talked at length about industrialization. And what we actually did, Amoya, was this. We said, listen, in order to have industrialization, you need land, labor, capital, entrepreneurial talent. Land, labor, capital, entrepreneurial talent. Then we said this. We said, Thomas, that in the United States, prior to 1812, to the War of 1812, was there land, was there labor, was there capital, was there entrepreneurial talent? We kind of evaluated that there may not have been, and the limitations to land, labor, capital, entrepreneurial talent, and we suggested that one of the things that changes after the War of 1812 is a transportation revolution. Now, there are going to be several questions on the test about the transportation revolution that we'll come back to in a moment. But one of the things that we mentioned that happened after the War of 1812 that contributes to industrialization is a significant increase in immigration. And we talked a lot about the volume of immigrants that come to the United States during the 1840s. Now remember, we kind of talked about that in chapter 15, and now we're coming back and talking about it. I mean, now, we came back and we talked about politically the election of 44, the war, the Mexican War, which was in 46. While those things were happening, you had this huge influx of immigrants, mainly from Ireland and Germany, right? Mainly from Ireland and Germany. And we talked about the Irish and why they came in large numbers, the potato famine in Ireland, and we talked about their impoverished nation. What was the most distinctive feature, though, about the Irish? Something that was different, besides them being poor. The other thing, go ahead, Nick. They were Catholics. And remember, there was a fair amount of anti-Catholic sentiment in Protestant-dominated America during this time. And the Irish's poverty, their Catholicism, resulted in a fair amount of discrimination. No Irish need apply. And the rise of what we call nativism. A backlash against the Irish and German immigration that occurs in this time period is the rise of nativism. And nativism is the notion America for Americans. Immigrants are not Americans. They are undermining the values and institutions, the traditions of the country. Their migration needs to be stopped. Right? Go ahead, Jason.
Germans, are they Eastern Orthodox or are they Catholic?
The Germans that migrated in large numbers were Lutherans and some Catholics. I mean, many of those German immigrants were Catholics. I mean, we know today the Pope is German, he's Catholic. That's one of the requirements to be Pope. You have to be Catholic. And there were German Protestants that came, and there were German Catholics that came. The Germans were different. Well, remember how we said the Germans were different? Oh, go ahead, Richards.
How could the Americans be mad at them? Like America completely built off of it.
Well,
Aren't they aware of the fact that like half of them are that's never been there?
well, I mean, you know, I think that regardless of the fact that America's history has been one of immigration, that any time there seems to be an overwhelming migration of people who are considered to be different than the people who are here, there is a nativist backlash. It was not unique to 1840 in American history. Such a nativist backlash occurred in 1890, and you might even argue is occurring now. Yes?
Well, the Irish people hated it because it was Catholic. Would it factory workers, factory owners like them because it's cheap labor?
I think that always factory owners and those who hired labor were in the forefront of easy immigration laws. So I think, yes, I think that factory owners and those who look to keep wages low, even today. I mean, if you look at immigration, illegal or otherwise, who is it that supports that? You know, I mean, who is it that hires these people? Well, it's businesses. So, okay. My question though was, how were the Germans different than the Irish? Besides, maybe yes. Oh, the Germans migrated further inland. Why? Because they had some level of money. Because their reason for migration tended to be more political, maybe, rather than economic. I mean, or seeking economic opportunity, political disenfranchisement. Now, there is a discussion in your text about somebody named Samuel Slater. Does anybody recall from their reading Slater's contribution to industrialization or any other element of economic development in the period? Does anyone besides the instructor?
I remember reading that.
Samuel Slater was responsible for the construction of the first textile mill in America. So Slater, and I think it was in, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it was in Pawtucket, Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah, I remember
Of
it.
all places. It was in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. So Samuel Slater memorized the plans for a textile factory and was responsible for the construction of the first textile manufacturing firm in America. And in fact, the largest aspect of manufacturing in America was textile manufacturing. And most of those manufacturing firms were located in New England. Now, Jason, we also talked about the cotton gin. Now, we talked about the cotton gin in conjunction with slavery in chapter 17, but it's also discussed as a technological innovation that contributes to economic transformation in chapter 15 in your text. And so the cotton gin is an important technological innovation that really, really, really transforms the economy of the country. Now, I'm not going to say any more about that because as a result of Sean Whelan, you kids know all there is to know about the cotton gin. What I am going to say something about is something called the cult of domesticity, which we did not talk about in class, but there is in fact questions on the test about. Kunal, we did talk about this. We did say that one of the results of the market revolution was a distinction between home and work. That up until the market revolution of the antebellum period, people worked at home. And so home and work were the same. You know, you owned a farm, you worked on the farm. You owned the shop, you lived behind the shop. People worked at home. During the market revolution, as the antebellum period progressed, more people were hired to work for wages. in factories, in businesses, so they left their homes and went to work.